Our beautiful mountain streams are one of the best assets we have here in western North Carolina. Not only do streams and creeks provide one of the elements of the quality of life that most people seek here in the mountains, whether you grew up here or moved here from somewhere else, but they're also an important asset that draw tourists to our area, which helps drive our economy. Hi, I'm Diane Silver, and I'm an extension agent with the North Carolina Cooperative Extension Service. You might be familiar with the Extension Service from the agricultural extension agents who work with our local farmers. But Extension does a lot more than just agriculture, and I'm one of those examples. I work on water quality here in the mountains to help protect streams and creeks from pollution and make sure that our streams remain healthy and productive. One of the biggest impacts facing our streams today is from stormwater runoff, the pollutants that reach our local streams and creeks from the developed areas of our cities and neighborhoods. So in this video, we're going to share with you some of the problems that come from stormwater runoff and the solutions that are out there to help minimize those impacts and make sure that we're all working to keep our mountain streams healthy and safe. Water quality is a complicated topic because there are so many things in the entire aquatic community and the aquatic environment that impact the water itself. Now, when most people think about water quality, we tend to think first about drinking water because that's one of the most important things we do with water. And so we're worried about how healthy the water is. But it's not just the chemistry of the water itself that impacts water quality. The health of the entire stream is a part of the story. And the stream is not just the water, but it's also the stream bed, it's the sand or dirt, the rock, what we call the substrate of the stream, and it's also the bank and the whole stream channel that are a part of whether or not that stream is really considered healthy or not. So there's lots of different things that we look at to try to determine whether a stream is in good shape. And it's not just whether or not the water is okay. For example, the #1 pollutant facing rivers and streams today is sediment. It's just dirt, good, clean dirt, in the wrong place. So dirt up on the land is just fine, but when too much dirt gets in our streams, it clogs up the stream and it hurts the habitat that the stream provides for critters like bugs and fish, frogs, salamanders, the kinds of things that we want to have living in our streams. In our mountain streams, the bottom of the stream should be a rocky, gravelly kind of a substrate because fish and bugs are using that area for their young, for laying eggs and for hatchlings and things like that. So when too much sand and silt gets into the stream, it smothers the rocks and gravel, it fills in the spaces between the particles, and it causes a homogeneous environment that doesn't support the aquatic life that we should be finding here in our mountain streams. So dirt is the #1 problem that we're facing. Other problems that we have in our streams that you can't see, but which are really important, include nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus. These are things that make the plants grow. You'll spread them on crops or people use them in their gardens. On ground, these things are just fine. But when these nutrients get in the water, too much of them become a pollutant. That's because in the water, they make the plants grow. And in this case, I'm talking about algae. So the nutrients in the water give a shot in the arm to the algae. We get what we call algal blooms, this big bloom of algae. It grows and grows and grows, and then when it dies, you have a mat of dead algae clogging up the stream. As that mat decays, that decay process uses up oxygen. And so too many nutrients makes the algae grow, decay of the algae makes the oxygen go down. Not enough oxygen, bugs and fish and other organisms are going to die. So that's a pollutant. So it's kind of a chain of events. Another example of pollutants in the stream is pathogens. These are germs that can make us sick. We can't see them just looking at the water, so we might look at this stream and say, looks clean to me, but we don't know for sure whether or not there are viruses and bacteria in there that could make us sick. Another pollutant that we are worried about is heat. Now, we don't tend to think of heat as a pollutant, but it's the unseen one. Our mountain streams historically are cold water streams, and the fish communities that have developed to live in these streams require those cold temperatures. If the water gets too warm, then it's no longer a supportive habitat for those species of native fish. So we want to keep the temperatures in our streams nice and cool. In the 40s is really best. When the temperatures get over 70, it can be lethal for fish like trout. Another category of pollutants that we're worried about is toxics. These are the actual poisons that could get into the water. When people think water pollution, you tend to conjure up in your mind a picture of black sludge coming out of a pipe from a factory, and that's water pollution. And that certainly is water pollution. And that was the biggest problem 30, 40 years ago when industrial pollution was the big issue. Today, we've done a good job in regulating and minimizing that kind of pollution, but toxics can still be an issue in streams coming from non-point sources, coming from little inputs all over the landscape. And again, all of these pollutants that I've talked about, sediment, nutrients, pathogens, toxics, heat, all of them come from stormwater runoff. The rainwater that comes from our neighborhoods, from our shopping centers, from the developed urban areas of our landscape, and run off into our local streams. So when we're out here at our stream, just looking at the water, it looks pretty good. It seems like it's a healthy stream, but we don't know for sure what's in it from all that stormwater runoff. And we also want to look at the bank and the channel in making a full assessment of how healthy this stream might be. One of the things about stormwater is that it's usually a chain of events that impacts the streams. And this is a good example. We're here at the site of an eroded stream bank, and you can see how steep this bank has become and how the tree roots are very exposed because the soil along the bank has been eroded away. Where did that soil go? It went into the creek. Now, we got done saying earlier that sediment is the #1 pollutant facing our streams today, and eroding banks is our one source of that sediment. The sand and dirt that comes off of the stream banks and gets into the creek causes problems for the ecology of the stream. So if we want to protect the stream, we have to protect the banks, and we have to prevent this erosion from happening. Well, how does this erosion get started? It gets started when the stream channel isn't able to handle the volume of water that comes running down it. Over time, our streams develop to the size and depth that they are based on the water that runs through them. They widen and they deepen until they become stable. And then they stay that way for a long, long time. And that process usually takes many, many years. It's a slow, natural process. When we build out in the landscape, when we take acres and acres of landscape that are woods or farmland or forest, and we turn them into paved areas or built areas with lots of hard surfaces, all that water that hits the land no longer soaks down into the ground. Instead, it runs off of those hard surfaces. And what we tend to do is what we call collect and centralize. That water runs down the downspouts, down the gutters, and we collect it in storm drains, and we pipe it to the nearest creek. What happens is that then our local streams are carrying way more water than they ever used to. The volume of water has changed in a very, very short time. In order to accommodate all that water, they become unstable. They start widening by eroding their banks. That process of the water eroding the stream banks is called stormwater scour, because that's exactly what's happening. It's the stormwater that's causing the volume in the creek to get really high, and it's the power of that running water, that erosive power that scours the bank and pulls the sediment down into the stream. So if we want to prevent that erosion from happening, we need to limit the amount of stormwater that's getting sent to our creeks so that the creek doesn't get overwhelmed and need to widen. So stormwater scour is the problem, and the solution is stormwater management. If we want to take care of our local streams, we have to go to the source of the pollution. The thing about water quality is that the land and the water are connected. This is what we call watersheds. A watershed is a drainage basin. The whole area of land that drains into any one particular waterway, whether it's a great big river or a little tiny tributary, that's a watershed. So in order to protect our streams, we have to take a watershed approach. And to do that, we have to go to the source of the pollutants, which is up on the land. So we're going to leave our mountain stream here, and we're going to go off to some of our local neighborhoods and take a look at where stormwater runoff and the pollution that comes with it gets started. All right, so here we are in you know, an average neighborhood in front of an average home. And this is a really great place to look at some examples of how stormwater works and how we can manage stormwater. On most homes, when rainwater hits the roof, it gets captured by gutters in the roof. It runs down the storm pipe, and from that pipe, it goes into the nearest storm drain. And the thing about these storm drains is that the water from many rooftops is all getting collected and centralized in these storm drains. The storm drains are all connected to the same storm drain pipe, and eventually they're going underground to the nearest creek. So the water that hits this roof and this roof and this roof and this roof, all the rooftops in this neighborhood and on this street, all that rainwater is getting collected in the storm drains and getting sent to the creek. That's exactly how that stormwater scour problem gets started. It's the collect and centralize idea. So what's the difference between this and this? The difference is this one is connected to the sewage treatment plant, to the water treatment plant. And the water that goes through those pipes is getting filtered and treated before it gets released into our rivers. Whatever goes down this drain, this is the storm drain, goes directly to the creeks. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. It doesn't go through the water treatment plant, it doesn't get filtered, it doesn't get cleaned. And so anything that goes down this drain, it's the very same thing as dumping it directly into the creek. It's as if you walked down the bank and stood on a rock and dumped that thing, whatever it is, right into the water. So whether it's trash or runoff laden with toxics or salt or sand or fertilizer or pesticides or whatever it is that that water might be carrying, it's going directly to the stream. That's an important thing to know. Another part of the problem is not only the volume of water that's going to the stream from this collect and centralize method, but also any potential pollutants that could be in that water. Whatever is on that rooftop, I don't know what the shingles are made of, but if there's anything leaching out of the shingles, or if there's any debris on the roof, anything that's coming in that rainwater down the pipe is going in the drain. Rooftop water generally isn't a huge source of pollutants, maybe a little bit of dirt and sediment, but it's generally the volume that we're worried about. But there's another source of stormwater runoff that comes from average neighborhoods, and that's all the pavement that's on the ground. If you look at each of these homes, there's a good deal of pavement that makes up the driveway and the parking area and the sidewalks for each home. Now, this is a rather pristine neighborhood, and I don't see a whole lot of oil spills or vehicle fluids sitting on the pavement. But think about neighborhoods across the county. Think about shopping centers and parking lots, churches and businesses, all the pavement that we have out there in the landscape. Any kind of pollutants that get put on the hard surfaces, if oils or brake fluid or radiator fluid, any kind of vehicle fluids are leaking out of cars or trucks and they puddle on the parking lot or in the road where the car is parked, when it rains, that first bit of rain washes those pollutants off the pavement, and where does it go? It goes into the storm drain. So those are examples of how toxics, along with the volume, get into our creeks. So what's the answer? One answer is to prevent that runoff from reaching the storm drain. Instead of directing the water down the pipe underground into the drain, let's just direct the water somewhere onto the ground where it's permeable, where the water is going to be able to soak down into the ground. We call that infiltration. And that's a really important concept in stormwater management for two reasons. One is the whole story that I just said about stormwater scour and the importance of trying to prevent the volume in our creeks from getting too great and scouring away the banks. The second is it's really important for us now more than ever that we put rainwater back down into the ground. We're entering an era of more severe weather patterns where we have drought and flood, lots and lots of rain, no rain. The times when we just have nice averages for a long time are ending. So when it rains, it's more important than ever that we capture that water and store it for the future, because I guarantee sometime in the near future we're going to be back in a drought situation and we're going to need that groundwater. Groundwater is a source of good, clean, pure water in two ways. One is we pump it directly for our use using wells. Anywhere there's a well, you're pumping groundwater. The other is groundwater seeps up in the form of springs and feeds the headwaters of our streams to keep perennial streams flowing. If you ever wondered how is it that streams can just keep on flowing and flowing and flowing when it hasn't rained, it's because of springs that are feeding the water from below. So for both those reasons, we need groundwater to be plentiful so that we continue to have a source of water when we need it. That groundwater gets replenished when it rains if, when the rain hits the ground, it's able to soak back down and filter down, 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 down back into the aquifer. That's nature's design. And wherever the land is permeable, where it's meadow or lawn or forest or farm fields, that infiltration is able to happen. But wherever we have paved over the landscape with hard surfaces, whether it's roads, parking lots, sidewalks, or rooftops, those hard surfaces prevent infiltration and the water runs off. So what we need to do is, as close as possible to where the water falls, we need to direct it to some spot where it's able to soak down into the ground, like it used to do before that area got built upon. That's the general idea of what we call retention, bioretention. So to do that, we want to direct the rainwater to landscape areas that will capture and hold that volume of water long enough to give it a chance to soak down, rather than running off into the street and flooding the street and therefore needing to go into a pipe in order to go away. So to do that, one strategy is what we call rain gardens. And a rain garden is simply a landscaped feature, a landscaped area that is designed for short-term storage. It's an area that's big enough to hold the average volume of water coming off of a given rooftop or a given parking lot or a given roadway and hold it long enough to soak down. In this example, there's a little landscaped area right here in the lawn that could be a rain garden, but it's not. You can see that it's bricked off. It's just designed for show. It's aesthetics, and it's very pretty. But rainwater isn't flowing into it. But this is a great example of what could be a rain garden if we wanted it to be. If it were designed with cuts in that border to allow the rainwater to flow in, then it would be a place where that water could be stored and could soak down. So this is an example that every home could do. It's the opposite of collect and centralize. Instead of every single home in the neighborhood directing the water into the storm drain, it would be great if every home in the neighborhood had its own little rain garden, its own little spot where the water from that roof and that little parking area got directed and got a chance to go back down into the ground rather than going to the creek. Now, we might think that big shopping centers are the big culprits in contributing to stormwater runoff. And while they certainly are a source, the truth is that just homes, all the homes all over the county added up all together are big contributors to stormwater runoff as well. So the important thing is that everybody is making an effort to do their little part. We have a really good example here. Here's just an average family home, but one thing that we want to take a look at is this driveway. Because there's traffic driving in and out, you know, there's cars coming and going every day, a driveway is going to become very compacted. It's pretty much impervious. It's as if it's been paved over. Water isn't going to soak down on this particular area. But because it hasn't been paved, this is a dirt and gravel driveway, when it rains and water runs off of this driveway, it's going to carry with it a lot of sediment, a lot of sand and silt, because it's not paved over and protected. What happened at this home is the homeowner recognized that that's exactly what was happening. Off of this driveway, a lot of sediment was getting carried out into the street and then down the street and into the storm drain, and that sediment is all going to local creeks. So he put in a small rain garden to capture and hold just the little bit of water that's coming off the driveway to prevent that water from running into the street and contributing to the problem. Let's take a look at how it works. So this is a really simple rain garden. The water is running off of the gravel driveway downhill, down, 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 and it simply runs into this little pocket garden area that catches and holds it. All he had to do pretty much was build a berm in order to create this pocket area, and it functions as a rain garden. It didn't require a whole lot of digging. It didn't require any kind of significant engineering or construction. It was a little afternoon project, and you can see how beautiful it is, and it functions really well. The secret to a good rain garden is you want to put in plants that are going to do well with what we call wet feet. They want temporary inundation. You want plants that like it when they get saturated occasionally, but then the water drains out again and it's dry. The general idea of a home rain garden is it's not a big deal. It's just like any other garden in your landscape. You pick the plants that you like for color or fruit or fall leaves, whatever it is that you want, but you simply design it so that it's catching and holding the volume of water that's coming off of your targeted area and preventing it from contributing to stormwater runoff going into our creeks. So if you'd like to put in a rain garden at your home, it's easy to do. It's pretty much like putting in any other garden. We're going to head on over to the Swannanoa 4-H camp, where it just so happens they're installing a rain garden at one of the buildings at the camp. So we'll go take a look at how it's done. Here we are at the Swannanoa 4-H Center, where experts from the Cooperative Extension Service are installing 2 stormwater management practices at one of the new buildings, a rain garden and a cistern. We're going to show you how these practices are installed.
Here's our building, and take a look at the downspouts. A real opportunity here was to capture water from this downspout and also from its mirror image spout on the other side of the building. So when we took that measurement and we looked at an opportunity, we said, this is great. It's not right by the front door, it's off to the side, and we definitely have flow coming not only down this hill, but also out of these 2 downspouts. We have some sod over next to the building, so that's going to help protect this as well, so we won't get a lot of off-site runoff. We're going to capture runoff from this downspout and from its sister downspout on the other side, and we're going to send it into this rain barrel. So for every 1 square foot on the roof, we have 1 gallon of storage into this rain barrel. We'll capture about 1.5 1-inch storm events. That's a good way to go. All this is a large rain barrel. What you'll see people with a 55-gallon rain barrel at the bottom of a downspout that services maybe 600 to 800 square feet of rooftop area. So if I had, again, 1,200 square feet of rooftop area, how big should my tank be? 1,200 square feet, which is what we have here, 600 on the front, 600 on the back, 1,200 square feet, 1,200 gallons, that's about what we have here, 1,100 gallons. When it rains more than an inch, well, in this case is more than 1.5 inches or 2 inches, that tank is going to be completely full. And at that point, we are going to construct an overflow outlet that's going to drain into our rain garden. You need to have an outlet, absolutely, because otherwise you're going to back water up into your system and possibly could cause damage to the house.
river. Well, I've taken a lot of.
So now, hopefully,
hanger's not going anywhere.
and we can have this either way.
Kind of hold around.
Yeah, here.
Can we have it in charge? That's the 45.
It's going to be up like this.
So here's our completed rain garden. Here's how it works. Previously, when it rained, water came down the downspout, and when it went all the way down to the ground, and the water shot out of the end of the downspout and flowed across the ground into the creek, and it was eroding away the ground as it went. Now, with our two practices in place, rain comes down the downspout and it goes into the pipe that takes it into the cistern. It collects in the cistern until it gets to the top level where the overflow pipe is. If the cistern isn't big enough and there's even more rainwater, then it flows out the overflow pipe and it comes down onto the splash guard and flows into the rain garden. And now the rain garden is all this much storage for additional rainwater that gives the water a chance to soak down into the ground and replenish groundwater rather than flowing off to the creek. It doesn't flow off to the creek until it fills all the way up to the top level of the rain garden and it flows over the berm, and only then does it flow across the land and off to the creek. And if that happens, the speed is much slower than when the volume of runoff is coming down off the roof during the rain event while it's raining. And so even if we have some runoff to the creek, it doesn't have the erosive power that it did previously. So the rain garden is doing three things. One is it's collecting the water and slowing it down so it's not as fast and powerful. That's taking away the erosive power and it's reducing erosion. The second is it's giving that water a chance to soak down into groundwater and replenish our local groundwater sources rather than being lost to the ocean by flowing downstream. The third is it's filtering out pollutants that might be contained in the water before it gets to the stream or gets down into groundwater by having that water filter down through the soil and through the substrate. And the fourth in this project is that we're actually saving 1,100 gallons of water for use watering the plants during dry times or washing vehicles or whatever it is that we might want to use that water for. Obviously not drinking or other primary uses, but lots of rainwater uses that we can use instead of using pristine treated tap water. So there you go. A cistern plus a rain garden, two practices in chain that help manage the stormwater runoff from this particular roof and that help reduce the problem of stormwater scour in the local creek. Managing stormwater runoff and preventing that stormwater scour is one really important part of protecting our rivers and streams from sediment pollution. But another really important part of it is preventing sediment that comes from disturbed sites. that runs over land and directly into the creeks. So here we are at a great example of a disturbed site, okay? Nothing wrong with disturbed. All it means is that it's an area where the ground cover has been removed, okay? Construction, like you see, or landscaping or grading, anywhere where the original cover has been taken away and is leaving bare soil that could easily be eroded away, that's what we call a disturbed site. There's a difference between sediment and erosion control and stormwater management. Where we are right now is a construction site. So the big concern here is sediment and erosion control. Because of the disturbance, it's a disturbed site, the ground cover has been removed, so it's vulnerable to runoff. It's vulnerable to erosion and that sediment coming off the site. There's all kinds of practices in place to prevent that from happening, and there's rules and regulations that require those practices. The thing to understand for homeowners is that that's different from stormwater management. When we say stormwater management, we're talking about post-construction stormwater management, managing the runoff from a site once it's all done. So when this site is finished, when it's a shopping center or a neighborhood, whatever it's destined to be, managing the water that's coming off of the rooftops, the parking lot, the driveways, any hard surfaces, that's what stormwater management is all about, and that's what we're talking about today. Sediment and erosion control from construction sites, from landscaping projects, from grading projects, anything that's a disturbed site like this one, that's a different topic. So here we are at a site that's all done. At one time, it probably looked like that construction site we saw, but the construction's all finished and this is now done. This is what it's going to look like for years and years and years and years. And this is the big issue with stormwater runoff, is the amount of hard surfaces, of impervious surfaces that we have in our landscape. Now, of course, we have to have development. We have to have shopping centers and homes and neighborhoods and all the things that we have when we live in an urban setting. But we need to manage the stormwater that's coming off of these hard surfaces in order to protect our rivers and streams. So that's what post-construction stormwater management is all about. And the way to do that is through lots of little practices all over the landscape to manage the runoff where it falls, where it's coming off of rooftops and parking lots, places like these, places like neighborhoods. That's what stormwater management is all about. Right now, we're going to go talk with Mike Goodson, who is the Stormwater Administrator for Buncombe County, to talk about the rules, requirements, and practices for post-construction stormwater management, because that's what we're interested for homeowners. Mike, we wanted to have a chance to chat with you because there's a lot of questions surrounding these issues, sediment and erosion control, and also post-construction stormwater management. And so I guess my first question is, can you tell us a little bit about your job with Buncombe County? What are your responsibilities and what is the county's involvement in all this stormwater management stuff?
Okay. Well, I appreciate you having me today, Diane. The county adopted a stormwater ordinance in 2006, actually in September. And that comes down from federal and state law. As you've spoken of earlier, stormwater has a lot of pollutants in it. Hydrocarbons, trash, oil, grease, you name it, it's in there. And when it rains, all that washes off into our streams and creates havoc for our ecosystems here in the mountains. So these rules are designed to do two things. Number one, they're designed to help absorb the extra stormwater that's created by our rooftops, our roadways, and so on. And the second thing is to try to mitigate some of these pollutants out of that stormwater runoff. So the trigger here in Buncombe County is for residential purposes. If a developer is developing a subdivision, if they're going to disturb more than an acre, they're required to get a stormwater permit, post-construction stormwater permit.
Okay.
And if it's a commercial site, it's actually based on the tract size. If the business has a tract or their property is an acre or larger, then they have to come and talk to me about a stormwater permit.
Okay. And when you say a stormwater permit, I know a lot of people hear that term and they think, how in the world do you get permission for it to rain? Like, it's going to rain whether I have permission or not. So what does that permit actually mean?
Well, the permit basically is a contract between whoever is doing the disturbance and creating all the hard surfaces. It's a contract between them and me, or me and the county, to make sure that they put in the measures to mitigate their impacts.
Okay, so the idea is that by putting in some new development, they're changing the amount of rain that's going to run off that site, right? So they're not getting a permit for it to rain, but they're getting a permit to change the site, which is going to make the rain run off instead of soak down. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
It's typically because you're putting in harder surfaces such as concrete, asphalt, or even gravel areas. Those areas drain the stormwater off much quicker and more of it. And so those two things have to be looked at.
Okay, so it's the permit to change the drainage, basically, of the site, and it's going to run off, and it's saying, here's what we're going to do to make sure that that runoff is controlled.
It's saying, we're going to permit you to do this if you have a good plan.
If you have a good plan, great. Okay. Are there some differences between permits or regulations related to that sediment and erosion control for disturbed sites while the disturbance is going on versus the requirements for that post-construction stormwater management? What are the regulations in the county?
Okay, well, our regulations are in line with state regulation.
Okay.
Some of our erosion and stormwater rules are a little bit more strict, and we need that strictness here in the mountains with our trout streams and so forth that we have. So in the erosion arena, we're really looking at trying to put in measures that will capture mud that's generated from a disturbed site for a 10-year storm, which is a pretty large rain event. Around here, that's about 6 to 6.5 inches in 24 hours, 6 to 6.5 inches per hour.
Per hour, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
And then for stormwater, post-construction stormwater looks at the 1 year 24-hour storm, which is about 2.25 inches in 24 hours. That's an 85 percentile storm, and that means that 85% of the rainfall we get through the year will be in that category, and that's why we use that standard.
So if somebody is doing a development, doing some kind of construction, and it's reached that 1 acre threshold that triggers this requirement, that they come to you, they do a plan that says, here's how we're going to control the sediment from our site or control the runoff once the site is finished. You review that plan, assuming everything's A-okay, they get their permit, right? And then they do it. They use those practices to control the sediment and erosion control, right?
That's right. Obviously, we want to make sure they come to us before they start.
Right.
Otherwise, they get penalized for that. And most do. Most developers try to do the right thing. And they do come to us and talk to us about their ideas before they actually start seeking a permit a lot of times.
Okay. What if a homeowner is putting in an addition like a garage, or they're converting a deck into a new room off their house or something like that?
That would not come into play with the county rules. That's typically way under our radar. Now, as far as post-construction stormwater, as far as erosion control, we're always concerned, no matter what disturbance is going on, whether it's an addition, a new construction, whatever, anytime you open up the ground, you're going to have a potential to get mud in streams, on the highway, or on somebody else's property. So the erosion rules are a little bit different in that the Erosion Control Law, the Sedimentation Pollution Control Act of 1973, actually is applicable to all disturbances.
No matter how small?
No matter how small. It's just
Okay.
that once you get over that acre of disturbance, you're required to get a permit.
I see. Okay. So no matter how small, you're supposed to control that sediment. It's just that
Absolutely.
you don't have to do the paperwork unless it's larger than that 1 acre.
Absolutely, and there's places out there where folks may want to put in a small driveway or a second driveway, and they want to put it in near a stream, and that really can create some trouble, and it takes some good planning to do things around any water courses. So, and we're always there for some technical help in that regard.
So
too.
we want to encourage people to use those best practices, right? It's not that you can't do what you want to do on your private property. It's just that there's good ways to do it. There's not so good ways to do it. Now here's a question, I know you represent Buncombe County. For folks who are within the Asheville city limits, the city of Asheville is within Buncombe County. Are they subject to those Buncombe County requirements or no, because they're inside the city limits?
Folks and developers who are inside the city limits of Asheville or inside their extraterritorial jurisdiction fall under the jurisdiction of the city, not the county.
Okay, so
And
they
they
don't
would-
have to go to two places and get permits from both,
That's correct.
both administrations?
That's correct.
Super, okay. Anything else that we need to know? I guess, of course, I want to ask if people want more information. They've kind of been hearing this on the TV, which is nice, but if they can't remember it, where do you go for getting it all in writing or figuring out what part is actually applicable to me and my situation?
Sure, there's a lot of resources out there. The first place I would go would be to the county's website, buncombecounty.org,
Okay.
and go to the planning department. And the planning department has a web page for both erosion control and stormwater. And furthermore, you can go to the state website, the ncdenr.gov, ncdenr.gov, and look for the water quality web page, and you'll find more information there.
Okay, and I know that the Extension Service also has a ton of information on both sediment and erosion control and also stormwater management practices. So the Extension website or your local county Extension office is also a really good source of information.
Great.
Great, all right, well, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been fun.
So just to tie this all together, stormwater runoff is a problem because it's a lot of extra water coming off of impervious surfaces and flowing into our creeks and streams and carrying with it all kinds of pollutants that, added up all together, cause a problem for the ecology of our rivers and streams. The solution to stormwater runoff is stormwater management, and that means managing that runoff where it falls, taking care of that runoff all over the landscape wherever the rain comes down. We've seen a couple of practices for how to do that at private homes and businesses. Rain gardens and cisterns are two practices, whether separately or in combination, that can help capture and hold the little bit of stormwater runoff that's coming off of one particular site and keep it out of the whole system. If you'd like more information on how to install a rain garden or a cistern or a rain barrel or any other stormwater management practices here in Buncombe County, please contact the Buncombe County Cooperative Extension Service. We'll be happy to share lots of details with you. If you live outside of Buncombe County, you might contact the Extension Service in your home county or look up the stormwater management program where you live. I'm Diane Silver with the Buncombe County Cooperative Extension Service. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you'll be putting in a rain garden or some kind of stormwater management practice on your property.